Good evening. I'm Brady Burrell for KQKI News, and thank you for joining us for tonight's Welcome Back to School Forum in partnership with the St. Mary Parish Schools, who will discuss its reopening plan for the 2020-2021 school year. Now let's welcome Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Teresa Bagwell, who will open this evening's forum.
Good evening, everyone. I want to personally thank you for joining us this evening. We would like to meet with you tonight, next Wednesday, and the following Wednesday to communicate our plans for reopening schools successfully for our kids. Our kids, as you guys know, have been out of school since March the 13th. And while they anticipated their summer vacation, this extended vacation has been very difficult, not only for our kids, but for our teachers and our schools as well. So we are planning to reopen schools on August 7th. And we want to do so in a manner that is safe, that is healthy, and that maintains the wellness of our kids physically, mentally, and socially. So tonight I have with me a number of supervisors, and we're going to talk through just the basic organizational pieces of reopening schools. So I want to introduce those to you at this time, beginning on my left with Ms. Deborah McClarty. Ms. McClarty is our Supervisor of Special Services. Next to her, I have Mr. Joe Stadalis. Mr. Stadalis is the Assistant Superintendent, and he's been working very closely with the organizational pieces, and he'll be able to weigh in on things like masks, which I know everybody is concerned about. Next to him, I have Ms. Lydia Duval. Ms. Duval is our nurse facilitator. She also serves as our contact with regional public health and offers us information on the medical foundations and research that's gone into the COVID response. Next to her, I have Ms. Claire Guarisco. Ms. Guarisco is the Supervisor of Child Nutrition. Then on my right, I have Mr. Mike Ortiz. Mr. Ortiz is our Director of Transportation. So he's going to talk to you this evening about buses and how we're going to have to change the transportation system to meet the state's guidelines. Next to Mr. Ortiz, I have Ms. Nikki Freyu. Ms. Freyu is our Supervisor of Elementary and Middle Schools. And next to Ms. Freyu, Dr. Buffy Fagenbush. Dr. Fagenbush is a supervisor of high schools. She's also working closely with our guidance counselors and scheduling kids based on our instructional continuity plan. So those are the department heads that are here this evening that will be able to address the components of the plan. We, again, are organizing this in such a way that tonight we're just going to talk about the very basics of getting kids back on campus. Next Wednesday, I want to focus more on the academic and instructional components that children will be involved in as they return to school. And then on the last Wednesday, we're going to organize it in such a way that we will review some of the information that we presented on prior Wednesdays, and we'll finish with any updates that we have been made aware of following the governor's reassessment of phase 2. So I want to begin by telling you all that yesterday the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education met to update what we call Bulletin 741, which is the guidance for elementary and secondary education. And in those changes, in those updates, they solidified some of the aspects that we've all been hearing about, that we've all read about, and that have been suggested by medical professionals. Bessie works in coordination with Ochsner Foundation, with the Office of Public Health, and with Children's Hospital. So they all have essentially agreed upon these guidelines and these aspects that are important to maintaining the health and wellness of our students. So that begins with our kids before they even leave home. What kinds of things can we enlist from parents and guardians to help our kids leave home knowing that they are well enough to actually attend school that day? So we're going to ask that parents assess their children before they leave to get on the bus or before they get in the car to travel to school. And those include things like just checking the child for fever, checking them to see if they have a headache or if they're very tired and lethargic. Does the child have a cough, or are do they notice breathing changes? Just simple things before the child even leaves the front door of the house to go to school to see if there might be a problem that needs to be addressed. And the other thing we're going to ask parents to do is to contact the school if your child shows any symptoms of illness. That may not be COVID related, that could just be flu. And keep the child home. The biggest detractor of the health and wellness of all children is to encounter someone who's ill and who didn't stay home. So we really want to implore upon parents, if you see any issues, don't send your child to school. Contact the school, let them know that the child is having some medical changes that day, and then call your health care provider and allow them to follow up on the specific symptoms and address those accordingly. Ultimately, if unfortunately a child does test positive for COVID, the school needs to know that. The school then will have to inform Ms. Duval, who will follow up with the Office of Public Health for contact tracing. So we need to know if a child or an adult tests positive for COVID, because there are certain protocols that we need to employ at that point to make sure that we are protecting the health and wellness of all those students or all the adults that that child came into contact with. So for further information, and again, this was part of the Bessie bulletin changes yesterday, I want to turn it over to Ms. Duval, who's going to talk to you all about some specifics on what schools are going to be doing to help protect the health and wellness of our kids.
Thank you, Dr. Bagwell. As we've started, it starts from the home and then they arrive on the campus. And as we're going to do this, we're going to be screening the students in order for us to know where do we need to take them from there. We're going to look at screening them upon arriving at the school, looking at the groupings that we make with them and the limits that we have in the classroom as they're going to be on the campus with us throughout the day. We're going to look at the social distancing in the classroom and the hallways and do the markings or the signage, and then have information in the schools and the facilities for the students. We are going to work with students and have them do their face coverings from the 3rd to the 12th grade, and if they need some accommodations, because as you know, some students do have medical issues that we would need to address, and that might prevent them from wearing a facial covering. So we will work at checking those temperatures in alignment with our food service program so that we can get everything done and articulate the students where they need to go on the campus. When we're looking at temperatures, we could be using the scanners, and we'll have a screening team, if you will, of trained employees at the school system along with the school health program. And as we look at that temperature, our key is if it's greater than 100.4, those students would then be what I call assessed further for what needs to be done. Because as you know, there are other childhood diseases and other viruses out there at any given time. We will work with the students in washing their hands throughout the day and allowing them to have those breaks in the modified schedule that will be flexing throughout the program. And then I'll give a minute for Ms. Claire Guarisco to speak to you for just a second.
Thank you, Ms. Duval. Upon entering school, students will wash their hands. Next, they will proceed to our cafeteria, where we will have breakfast in bags, so that we will have breakfast grab and go. And that is for all students at all 21 of our schools. We were very pleased that the school board passed a resolution accepting CEP for all schools next year. Therefore, all students in our parish will receive a free breakfast. Students will grab that breakfast and then go to their designated area. Lunches, we will definitely provide social distancing, considering classroom capacity, group capacity at each school. So lunches may be served in some classrooms, and we will utilize our cafeteria as well. For students in junior and senior highs that will be on a hybrid schedule, we want to reassure parents that when students leave school for the day, they will receive the breakfast and lunch for any day that they're not at school. So upon exiting school, we will also have carts set up, and it'll be a grab and go breakfast and lunch. Turn it back over to you.
As you know that when you have that opportunity to get to your designated area, or when you have to leave that designated area, we will have a cleaning program in place so that any common area or a high-touch surface would be cleaned. We'll have classroom level cleaning, we will have school-wide cleaning, and then we will have cleaning procedures in the event that we have to open what we would refer to as a sick room. We will look at sanitizing the desk when the students exit the classroom, eliminate any need for sharing of supplies or computers, and then we're going to establish the transitional patterns and the support of the social distancing as we go through the day. We will have the exit and entry points of the school, depending if they're coming by bus or if they're coming by car, and then if we would have to exit the building for any reason. We would ask that if a student is ill and the school nurse contacts you, we will put that student in an isolated area so that you would have the opportunity to be notified, and then we could process with you what those next steps would be. And that would be to contact your healthcare provider and have that opportunity. As you know, that depending on what you're looking at, you may have a time frame in which the child would have to remain home after testing positive, and that would be for a duration of 14 days. So we will work with you as far as the students' needs are for their health needs, and then if you have any questions, you can always contact the school health department here at the central office, and we will work with your special need population as well, or your chronically ill, or any student that has a medical or health issue, so that we can make sure that they have access to all services and needs while on the campus.
Thank you, Ms. Duval. Essentially, parents, there are three keys to providing for the health and wellness of students while they're on campus, while they're in the classroom. The first is to wear a face covering. That is key to making sure that our students don't come in contact with COVID-related expenditure out of their face. The second thing is for the kids to wash their hands, and to wash their hands multiple times during the day. So there will be scheduled times where your kids are asked to go into the restroom, go into the cafeteria to wash their hands. And in fact, we're even going to instruct them on how to wash their hands, because some kids are used to either just hurrying and getting it over and not necessarily following the safety protocols that we need them to follow to wash their hands. And finally, social distancing. The 6 feet social distancing rule, coupled with the face coverings and washing their hands, are the best things that we can do to keep our kids safe and to keep them learning every day of the school year. So I want to talk to you all about bus transportation. If at all possible, we really would like for parents to be able to bring their kids to school. This allows you a little extra time to kind of assess the child before he's dropped off that morning. But also, it breaks up the groupings that are entering a building at any given time. So if at all possible, we would ask that parents utilize their own personal transportation. We understand that there are cases where that cannot happen, and we are going to protect those kids as they travel on the bus. So I want to turn it over to Mr. Ortiz, who will talk to you about bus transportation and the safety protocols that we're going to enlist for kids riding the bus.
Thank you, Dr. Bagwell. In phase 2, our buses will operate at 50% capacity with appropriate spacing with kids. I'm sorry about that. Again, I'll repeat that. In phase 2, our bus capacity will be operating at 50% of its capacity and with appropriate spacing between the kids. Only students that live in the same household will be allowed to sit together. Drivers will also be encouraged will be required to wear a face mask, and they will also drive with the windows down when weather permits. Okay. Is anything else, Doc, in regards to that?
Cleaning between.
Oh yes, cleaning. We will clean and sanitize the buses between the routes and after the routes as well. Doc, any questions, concerns? All right.
And once students arrive at school on the bus, those buses will be guided as far as releasing students off the bus. Remember that the key is to social distance and to keep our groups small. So duty teachers and administrators will greet the buses when they arrive to guide the students off the bus and then ultimately into the cafeteria where they'll wash their hands, grab their breakfast, and then move on through the rest of their day. Currently, we have 3 phases of school reopening. So I want to just kind of go over those with you so that you understand what each of them means, because you'll hear people use the phrases phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and the other day we heard from the LHSAA that there was a phase 4. We have tied these phases and these conditions for reopening to the governor's directives. So in phase 1 is what you all saw in March. It was the sudden closure of schools. It was complete social distancing. So under phase 1, those guidelines have been somewhat modified to allow for the potential opening of school, but the capacity is at 25%, which would make it very difficult for you to transport students at a 25% rate, or for you to maintain any semblance of daily school life at 25%. Class size would be limited to 10 in a phase 1 setting. You would continue to have the static groups that we kind of mentioned earlier, where kids move together in groups and return in the same group. Masks and social distancing would continue as we have currently. The problem is that we encounter in phase 1 is just the strict limitations on the number of students that can be in any one classroom. So in phase 1, should we ever be ordered back to phase 1, students would primarily learn through an online education system and through curriculum resources that rely primarily on online delivery. We are more prepared for a phase 1 reentry should that occur than we were in March, certainly. Our teachers have been training over the summer in conducting what's called Microsoft Teams. Microsoft Teams is similar to the Zoom meetings maybe that some of you have participated in, but they are aligned to our Microsoft applications, and every student has a sign-on to access those applications. So Microsoft Teams offers us the flexibility of talking specifically to those students as they log in and making sure that our instructional activities on Microsoft Teams are such that we eliminate the ability to be hacked and have random people suddenly appear during a Zoom meeting. So in phase one, we would rely again on the online aspects of education. Currently, we are in phase two, and we anticipate continuing to be in phase two when school opens on August 7th. In phase two, your capacity for bus transportation, as Mr. Ortiz just mentioned, is 50%. That makes it feasible to get students to school using 1 to 2 bus routes per area. So allowing the transportation system to operate in an efficient manner enables us to open school as close to the traditional time as possible. Classroom size is limited to 25. 25 includes the teacher. So it is not inconceivable that you would have a classroom of 24 students. Most of our classrooms traditionally have 24 students. So in phase two, it allows us a more feasible option for operating school on a regular basis. In phase two, students are required to wear masks. You're required to physically distance at 6 feet to the extent possible, and you're asked to maintain static groups. That means that kids come to school and they essentially stay together as much as possible. In some schooling aspects, that's a lot easier conducted than in others. As you all know, for the most part, an elementary school group pretty much stays with that class throughout the day, whereas a high school group, particularly juniors or seniors who are going into various jumpstart classes or maybe a dual enrollment class, they divide up multiple times through the day. So maintaining static groups is a little more challenging depending on the school level that you're talking about. In phase two, as we mentioned earlier, students are required to wash their hands throughout the day. The guidance is every 2 hours, but especially when kids are entering, exiting the building, or when they've been in contact with multi-surface areas, such as the cafeteria, such as playground equipment, and so on. They're required to have temperature checks, wellness checks upon arrival at the school, and that those cleaning aspects that we mentioned earlier, making sure that common touch areas are sanitized on a frequent basis. The stair rail, you know, when kids go up and down the stairs, they inevitably touch the stair rail. So as kids move from one class to another, those areas would need to be cleaned immediately thereafter. According to the St. Mary Instructional Continuity Plan, in phase two, students in pre-K through 5th will attend school every day. We will have the multiple entries so that we can break up groups as they enter and exit the school. We will have the guidance in moving kids off the bus to maintain a small group of 25 or less. And we will go through those health and wellness checks as the kids enter the building to make sure that we isolate anybody who might be ill. Students in grades 6 through 12 in a phase 2 setting, which is what we will be in, presumably when school opens on August 7th, will participate in a hybrid model of education. So those students will be divided into 2 groups. One group will come on Monday and Thursday. The second group will come on Tuesday and Friday. On Wednesdays, the building will be clean, the kids will all participate in online activities, and teachers will have time to contact parents and follow up on any feedback for assignments. If a student in 6 through 12 attends school on Monday and Thursday, that means on Tuesday and Friday, they're going to have specific online activities assigned to them by the teacher. So the question becomes, how are they going to conduct these online activities if they don't have a laptop, if they don't have a device? Well, over the summer, the district invested nearly all of its CARES Act money in purchasing devices so that every child from 3rd grade through 12th grade will have a device available to them to bring home and participate in any online activities that they're either doing as part of their hybrid model in grades 6 through 12, or if we unfortunately have to shut down and go back into phase 1 at any point during the school year. These devices will have safeguards for making sure that the student isn't accessing areas that should not be accessed, that they are loaded with the Microsoft Teams, the Microsoft applications, and also with a thing that we call Clever, that students use to log in to get to their online learning activities. So we've prepared for phase 2 to the depth possible. I do want to mention something about special education. Special education students will have the option of attending school every day. So while we are in phase 2, again, pre-K through 5 will attend school on a daily basis. They will be divided into static groups, and they will participate in those health and wellness guidelines that we mentioned earlier. Social distancing, washing your hands, and wearing a face covering in grades 3 and up. Grades 6 through 12 will participate in a hybrid model where they will attend school 2 days a week and then participate in online activities that are aligned to the learning that they completed on those 2 days. And finally, if we get to phase 3, which I sincerely hope comes very soon as we mitigate this virus, school will return to normal. All students will come every day. Bus capacity will be at 75%, and we won't have to worry about running multiple routes, except in those high populated areas that we would have done so anyway. We will be able to return to sports and some semblance of normalcy, as kids will be able to participate in band and chorus. Up until that point, parents, guardians, the public, we are going to have to take steps to make sure that our kids are able to return to school to the degree possible under phase 2 guidelines. We're going to have to be the ones to try to instill in our kids the knowledge and the understanding that wearing a face mask is important, that washing your hands fully is important, and that maintaining social distance is critical in learning and attending school successfully on a regular basis. So that, I believe, covers the very basics of our reopening plan. I do also want to mention that we are conducting a parent survey of educational options. Parents should have received a J-text from their school last Friday with a link to fill out the survey. The survey is less than 10 questions. It will not take you long to fill out. The only challenge and problem you may face is the fact that we need you to fill out a survey for every child in your family. The survey asks very basic information as far as a parent or family's intent to return to school on campus, or their interest in a virtual option, so that they can be contacted further to provide information on virtual options. We are requesting information about internet access at home, internet providers, and then special concerns that you may have. Because we are looking at all of these questions and these concerns and trying to make sure that we answer them well in advance of school opening on August 7th, so that parents feel comfortable sending their kids back to school. There is no substitute to learning for a teacher in a classroom. You cannot replicate the amount of learning that can take place with a child in a classroom with a teacher. While online options are motivating for kids, and they do offer alternatives and the ability to learn at home, there is no way that we could ever replicate having students in school for their social, emotional, and academic learning. So we are very anxious to return to school on a daily basis. But for now, we are under phase 2, which means pre-K through 5 will come daily, and 6 through 12 will participate in a hybrid model of both on-campus and off-campus learning activities. So I want to thank you for tuning in tonight. We will return next Wednesday. We'll go through some of this information again just as a reminder, and then I want to focus on Ms. Freyu and Dr. Fagenbush, who will walk you all through the instructional components of our return to school. So thank you and have a great evening.
And again, we want to thank you for joining us for tonight's Welcome Back to School Forum. And as Dr. Bagwell said, we want you to join us again next Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. and each Wednesday leading up to school on August 7th, where we will continue to have these forums and where they will go into more detail. We realize there are a lot of questions still to be answered, and they're going to do their very best to answer those questions for you. So please join us again next Wednesday right here on KQKInews.com and on the KQKI Digital Video Network. I'm Brady Borrell for KQKI News. Have a great evening.